The end was always going to be updated, but the big question now is how. These are the 3 most popular end update packs released this year, relevant now because a developer confirmed what he wanted from an end update. Mojang has just added support for custom biomes in the most recent one, and Jeb himself has even decided to comment on it this week. We are in a time of unprecedented end posting, which is why it's important to set things straight about what really should happen with an end update, because there are 3 separate paths that it could go down, and they will all make Minecraft a drastically different game, and so it's important we go into that today. Hello, I'm FYX and you can subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see the real side of Minecraft news and updates, but let's start with an important terminology check, because the preamble here is to say that the end was actually added in 2011, but already received an update in 2016. We saw an end update alongside a combat update, but the interesting part about this is it added the end islands, which have therefore been the same for the last 9 years, which is interesting because the Nether was first added in October 2010 and got its big Nether update in June 2020. Even though people say they want an end update, what they're really saying is they want an end island update with maybe a change as to how you go into the end to begin with. Because right now it is it's become a big meme to make fake Minecraft posts saying stuff like, oh yeah, when you beat the Ender Dragon after staying up all night, one of the best feelings to date, maybe that's a hint of an end update. Maybe this Minecraft Live announcement thumbnail is a hint that they're doing something in the end, but probably not. And, you know, this could be a hint that they're doing some Minecraft end changes, but I just don't know for sure. It's funny to say that you don't know an end update is coming, because it has become meme status in the community at this point. An end update has been requested for years, and obviously we haven't seen anything concrete about it. Or have we actually? This last month has been very interesting for end posts, because early this year, Jeb directly confirmed when asked about the end update that he was not going to comment on anything that isn't already shared on Twitter. This is interesting because he is willing to share direct responses to things like the Wither Storm, which he says is better in Minecraft Dungeons, and then he also says that food could be made more interesting, again another whole mechanic that he's very clearly hinting at. But then the most interesting change came early this month when someone asked him, FBI Fun, of course, I respect that, but he was curious about the original vision of surface strongholds. Were they created with dimension travel in mind from the start? The magic blue portal textures in beta 1.9 made him wonder if this was originally a way to get to the sky, and the response is that nope, the surface stronghold was just a happy accident, but back then there were no reliable tools to detect the surface of the world, so the strongholds ended up far beneath the ground to avoid being in oceans and similar. Then says that surface detection was added later for end cities, interestingly enough, but then the response is a happy accident, it looks super cool, and then Jeb says in response, yeah, maybe this could be looked into again, because currently the strongholds try to place themselves straight under a village. If you don't know, this is only the case on the Bedrock version of the game. Maybe that is a sign that Jeb wants it on the Java version, but it's an interesting idea that a surface stronghold could be a rare but real possibility. And if it was going to be added to the game, who better than the original person who added it to begin with? Because if you don't know, in my survival Let's Play world, I have a recreation that I built from Jeb's original image, because they never actually added it to base Minecraft, they simply shared what it looked like in development Minecraft screenshots back before snapshots were a major thing. And so what if this is a thing that Jeb is seriously considering re-adding to the game, a way to actually get down below the surface? Well, I think this is interesting, and the fact that Jeb is considering how strongholds should work is definitely food for thought by itself, but a much more direct, lit match is what comes from Olraf, another Minecraft vanilla developer. He recently did an interview in Hebrew, and you might have heard the simple summary that came from Reddit here, where it says the end update is inevitable and will have wasteland vibes, so few biomes, new blocks and mobs, and an improved end dragon fight, which is weird because actually the original document that this Reddit post is sourced from was this one, which came from Clump, and in this post he says, as he translates it, that Olraf is saying the end update will be surprising and unexpected, and there's something he said in the stream that was innocent and people won't understand, but in a few years people will feel dumb they didn't understand it. And given in that same interview he spoke about hamsters, I'm just saying, and hamsters sound like they're confirmed, am I right? But more seriously, you can see that Olraf did have to come out and say he was just talking about his opinions, he wasn't making an announcement about what's in the game, but again, both Jeb and Olraf, and presumably many other people on Mojang staff and payroll, are currently considering what to change about the end, just as we reach almost the 10-year anniversary of the End Islands being added and seemingly being barren. It's very, very interesting that we start to see this, right? And this is why end posting has picked up again, but I think a big part of it is also the fact that this is just the meme update the community want right now. When I speak to people who haven't played Minecraft in years, they say, oh, I can't believe that they haven't added an end update yet. It's one of those classic, point everyone knows they want it requests, but yet it hasn't been added to the game, and so maybe that's a good sign that it's on the docket for their next major update. Something we again know from the same ORAP interview that is in the works at some point. Mojang has said at some point they'll be releasing those major long-term initiatives, and is an end update a long-term initiative? Well, I guess it depends on how you want to measure that. But speaking of measuring that, let's now talk about how Mojang should update the end, because I think it's really easy and well to say, yes, at some point Minecraft will update the end. Over a long enough time span, and with Minecraft we're talking about potentially 30 to 100 years, obviously, basically everything will be updated, so with the end in particular, what is going to change? Let's go now into a bunch of different end updates that have been released by the community, and let's see exactly how they weigh up and which ideas Mojang should take and which ones they definitely shouldn't. So the most recent of these is Realism Craft 2.0. There's a lot of things that came in this, but I really have to point out the $15 price tag. But what's interesting about how they've changed the end is they've simply added one new biome, which generates maybe 10% of the time, in addition to the old end. This is great because it preserves the existing end, but the new biome they've added, despite having a new mob and a new plant and a new form of formation in the sky there, it all looks very strange because it looks like glazed terracotta and glowstone, and although it's super luminous, it just feels a little bit wrong. Am I alone in thinking that? I think that this is a little bit wild, and as it turns out, it's not the only thing they changed, because they also made it so there are these kind of geode looking structures, so if you've ever wanted to go caving in the end and have the caves look like the overworld, well, good news, you can do that. This is Realism Craft, and I've got to say, it's something, but also, there's also this structure over here, a different variant of an end city that is kind of like a cross between an end city and a pyramid, and it's definitely implying we should put end crystals down here. You know what? Let's find out what happens when we do. Oh, that's disappointing, isn't it? Do we need another one for here, maybe? No. Okay. I don't think I've ever been so disappointed in anything in my whole life. But anyway, this is Realism Craft. It's basic, but it is very much retaining the current end character outside of a couple of areas. A couple of weird areas, honestly. Next up, we have Eternal End. This is a pack that focuses on changing the end specifically, and so there are far more changes made to it. As you can see, we have not just giant books that I can read, but also entirely new sets of armor, entirely new tools that you can hold, and interestingly enough, if we equip the Elytra... Oh, I have no fireworks for it. Oh, interestingly enough, if I were to equip the Elytra, you'd be able to see that it actually has multiple different biomes, which we can find by looking through this guide. Wow, Purpurite and Enderite and Amorite and Vanilla ore. There's a lot going on here, but basically the way they've achieved it is by massively altering the end so that it has not just friendly biomes, but also spooky, scary biomes. And as you probably saw a second ago, and as I can hopefully show you if we fly out of this shadow biome, you can see they've also duplicated the end so it generates twice, once at the top there, and then also once at the bottom. This does mean that there's way more space for content, and so one of my favorite weird examples is they have this kind of like abandoned mineshaft but for the end structure. As you can see, there's one over here, which hopefully I can land on. Oh, thank God. And these obviously use shulker boxes as their chests. This is a much more featured end, and if you're looking for a large amount of end content, this is the one that I think you could point towards. However, it's not to say that it's issueless. In fact, I think quite the opposite could be said to be true. I need this to hit me. There we go. I think the opposite could be said to be true, because by adding so much to the end, it also removes all of the currently existing character, besides the fact that it's made from end stone and, I don't know, it's to the edge of the main end islands. I'm going to need to make it back, aren't I? Well, before we die a terrible, perilous death in the shadow end, how about we switch to the third recent end change that you might have seen? This is Better on Bedrock, one of the most popular pieces of content on the marketplace, with almost 20,000 reviews. That means it has hundreds of thousands of sales, and hundreds of thousands of people clearly like this end, and what's not to love? You can see that I've immediately spawned into a biome that has Bacterio. Oh, they've gone for like a virus theme here, it looks like. And then you can see there's a chorus-themed biome over here with its own unique behemoths and its own unique wood, which I think is a really cool addition as well. Then we've got this more kind of yellow biome, which is themed around bugs. We've got like this big, almost jungle-looking canopy over there. Look how beautiful it gets as we get closer. And then as well as keeping the existing end structures, and notably too, the existing end biomes. You won't find many of them, but there are some parts of this end which do just look like the end barrens that we have right now. There are also other structures added in here as well. So lots of new blocks, some of which are super bioluminescent, lots of new mobs, some which exist in every one of these biomes, from Crocus, oh that's a fun name, to Flasps. But yeah, you can see all of these biomes and all of these things exist in a way that actually is quite wonderful to look at. And so I think that by weird coincidence of the order we went in here, I think we've ended up sorting the end dimensions by what would be best for an add-on, right? If you want a lot of content in your end add-on, weirdly enough, I think Better on Bedrock might be better than the Eternal End, but despite that being true, and the fact that both pieces of content clearly dwarf Realism Craft, I think that there is a really interesting debate to be had here, which is the fact that Realism Craft might provide some of the best ideas for what Mojang needs to do for the future. And before you go crazy on this, hear me out here, right? Better on Bedrock and the Eternal End both pretty much replaced the entire end as it exists right now, used it as a blank slate to build something on top of, whereas Realism Craft had very little content. It feels like they phoned it in, to be totally honest, but they had very little content, but it was very well spaced, and that is a critical thing, because the end does have its own unique identity. Right now, it's the place where you get Shulkers, the Elytra, and a whole bunch of nothing in between, right? But this still makes it the latest game place to exist, and it's why fundamentally there's a different identity here. But what is the identity of the other places that they recently gave biomes to? Let's compare the Overworld and the Nether to the end. Well, the Nether got an update in 2020, and the way that they styled it was by having 5 biomes, which are relatively small, especially compared to the Overworld, but it's very hard to actually traverse and see all 5 of them, because even though this is early mid-game content, you could come here later with an Elytra, but good luck flying around and seeing anything. The Overworld is a place where for most of the time you don't have great transport. Maybe a horse is the best way you're getting around it, and by the time you have an Elytra, you've probably found all of the things that you could benefit from by flying around and seeing different biomes, and also they're far bigger biomes anyway, so the identity of the Overworld is kind of this place where everything is big and far apart, and it's up to you to bring those distances down. And so I think that if we're going to look at the end, we should at least be saying, okay, what if it was like the Overworld, where there's big, hundreds or sometimes thousands of block long biomes, but that to me also feels wrong. What if instead we kept the end mostly barren, let's say 70% barren, and it's the remaining 30% which would have occasional patches, just like Realism Craft, if you'll believe me, again, giving it some compliments here again, but what if we kept some little patches of some rare biomes that were something cool to find? I think that having extra structures and extra challenges and extra reasons to be in between all of the other stuff would fit into the identity really nicely. Does that mean that it shouldn't have trees? I'm not going to go that far. A lot of people seem to think that you can't have any life in the end, but I think there should be fun and real benefits to being here, but I think it should also be tricky to find, because this is the dimension that you come to with the most content behind you in the game, and so it should be that when you're looking for rare content or whatever it is they're going to give you here, it should be something that's not necessarily too easy to see, because it needs the dimension needs to keep in mind the fact that you have an Elytra by the time you're here because of the big city that's found there. I also think that it's entirely possible, if we go a little bit more conceptual here, that Mojang could just mess, the way that biomes are done in the Nether and the Overworld doesn't need to apply here, because the end dimension, if we ignore the main place where you fight the dragon, is effectively, it's 1,000 blocks apart from the center, meaning you could do all sorts of other goofy ideas not found in other dimensions. So imagine this simple idea. I'll show you a mock-up on screen right now. Imagine if you take the end, that little circle is the main end island. It's where the stuff starts to generate. What if you instead divided it into 4 separate sections? You made one of them the current existing end biome for people who want it, maybe positive. Then you could make yourself a fictional blue biome in the top left. Then you could have a green biome in the bottom left and a purple biome for the bottom right. You can actually make it so that you can pick your own end island adventure, and there's all sorts of goofy ideas you could do with this if you wanted to. This looks a lot like a Microsoft logo, doesn't it? That's quite suspicious. Anyway though, I have just one last question I'd like to answer today, and it's for anyone who's watched this entire thing and is then wondering, so what is really happening, Toycat? When is the end getting an update, etc, etc? And outside of summarizing what we've said in this video, I just want to say that yes, it has been 9 years since the end received an update and since the end islands were added to begin with, and obviously Mojang are considering what to do in a future end update, but that doesn't mean that those ideas are going to come to fruition anytime too soon. Lots of long-term initiatives happen at Mojang that don't have a deadline of next year, and this is important so that the company doesn't rush very big things, but it means that even though an end update might be on their minds right now, it might not even be next year or the year after that we actually see it. It could be that they go for one big update for 1.22, or it could be that they release it piece by piece in the drop system as 1.21.180 and 1.21.277. And so the truth is that Mojang are having big conversations, but like many big conversations, you're not going to get to hear about what happened in them until the results are clear. Anyway, with that said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe, because I'm going to see you in the next video. Goodbye.